What do self-worth, consistency, productivity, and mindsets have in common? Well, they have in common that, first of all, I've been talking about it last week, but more importantly, that it's something that has been discussed during this last weekend at Ultra. So, for those who do not know what Ultra is, it's an event from Brennan Burchard. It's a mastermind, and we get together through Zoom or live twice a month. Now, bear with me for a sec. I need to press go live here on Instagram. And for some reason, it's not working. Yeah, this is amazing how things work when they don't work. I'm giving up on Instagram today. I just did a live earlier, as in 7 minutes. And then I realized, like, hang on, I was doing something with Instagram. I need to press go live. And, well, apparently something has changed. The key has changed. I was pretty sure I put the key in here. I'm not going to go back at it again. It's what it is. So today has been a challenging day, but when we talk about consistency, and I believe consistency is key, I decided to go do it. So for the past years, I have actually been struggling with consistency. In 2022, I actually went, no, 2023, I actually went live, no, 2022, I was right, for 8 months, as in every Wednesday. And I was like, okay, when I went to Chicago that year, it was a little, everything went haywire, different time zone. I was not on my own. We were planning on doing things, didn't work out. And I stopped recording. Of course, there were more circumstances, but that's what happened. So last year, when I went back to Chicago, we said, okay, I need to be able to go live, coach people. And that's what I did. So every Tuesday since March last year, I have been doing a live group coaching training. And I'm proud to say that when it comes to consistency, I finally managed to be consistent. So, hang on. I want this little one to be a bit more visible. Don't drop down. So that's Chief Rockstar, my travel buddy. And I made the bear, or they made the bear for me. I chose what it would consist of in Chicago when we were there last year. And he's going with me ever since, everywhere where I went. He even was there at Ultra when I was there last October. But enough of Chief Rockstar. I want to share about last week, and I want to share about consistency. So I've told you Friday Night Live is going to be about everything I shared on Instagram and then sort of mixed together into a new framework. But because I also am part of Ultra, and that was yesterday and today, hence why I'm late. And again, things do not seem to go right today. I had a printer with a mind of its own. Now this happened with Instagram nonstop, and there's only so much I can do. So I created this one, and ever since I started working with frameworks, it's one of those things that I love to do because it gives me something to hold on to and something to focus on. Sort of the same things, but yet a little bit different. Doesn't really matter. So listening to what all the guests from Brennan Burchard had to say, I realized that, and I was very happy about that, and I'm actually going in the right direction. So I've made a number of frameworks and other stuff. I've made this blog post which is about the Courage Challenge, which I did last weekend. And I talked about consistency, one step at a time, being a role model, and some other things that I talked about. We are going to talk about that one too, because we also want to talk about mindsets and self-worth, and also a little bit about productivity, which is the theme of this month. I also talked about transform your thinking from negative to positive. And quite honestly, when Jamie told her story yesterday, and then today Trent Shelton, both related to worth, that's what made me quiet. It made me really quiet. I was happy with the other stories too. I mean, especially Natalie Ellis. She told us what we needed to do to grow our audience on Instagram. So she is all about charge. And quite honestly, she gave us a lot of homework a couple of weeks ago, if it wasn't last month. Well, it was last month, to be certain. But um, I was like, okay, hang on. I'll go do it. Just not now. But what she said today, that was spot on. And that brings me to that one thing. So a lot of people have said it, but not as clearly as I heard it now. Now, here's the thing. When we are focused on certain things, we suddenly, all of a sudden, see it like everywhere. You know, oh, I'm going to get that blue car, and all of a sudden, that blue car is everywhere. You probably have experienced it yourself. And that applies to that one thing too. So since I've been working on posting something on Instagram, like every day, since I've been working on consistency, and that's since I've been working with a coach from the same guy, yes, Brendan Burchard, things have changed, because she asked me, what is your one thing that you need to work on? And I said, consistency. And I knew this because when I was at Brendan a couple of years ago, I met Evan Carmichael, and Evan Carmichael's a YouTube expert. And what did he say? You need to post at least once a week, preferably 2 or 3 times a week on YouTube, long form content. And I was like, yeah, he has points. Now, recording videos is not that much of a challenge anymore. It's getting easier with every day, because I practically record myself every day. And it's about being able to come up with something on the spot, and not to say too many mms and ahs. And well, I do have the words that I do repeat. I am aware. Getting back to consistency, and that one thing, Evan said it too, it's about getting good at something before you go on, before you move on. I am pretty sure Brendan said it himself as well. And working with that coach, saying I wanted to be consistent, I realized I was only able to focus on one thing at a time in order to improve things. So the other thing that I said I wanted to work on is the platform that I'm using. I heard years ago about it, when I was at Brendan. Brendan invested in the company. It's called Kajabi, and it's huge, it's immense, and they make a lot of improvements when time goes by. I have to say that ever since I started using it, I really have seen some things that I'm really happy about that have changed. But here's the thing. When I started with Brendan, and I think that around that time, or maybe prior to it, I also started listening to Ilko de Boer. They talked about OVO. Well, Ilko de Boer is Dutch, so he called it a little bit differently. And he also talked about focus. He actually talked about having the the focus of a shrimp. I don't know why a shrimp. I don't think he knows it either, but he said stay focused on that one thing, because otherwise you don't ever finish anything at all. So getting back to the platform, is a huge platform. Everything is in there. But years ago, when we talked about OVO, opt-in value offer, if you've worked with Brendan before, listen to his videos or his lives, then you know, or you've been at his Expert Academy marketing training, then you know OVO, opt-in value offer. And back then, that was without upgrading, without order bumps. And before you are like, would say, what? Well, that's when you not just take people to a thank you page, but before they check out, you offer them something different. Could be something a little cheaper, could be something a little more expensive. But you want people to buy as much as possible. So nowadays, say that you register for a free live event, then they are bound to say, but do you want to be VIP? Do you want to keep the recordings? Well, there you go. That's an upsell. That's what we mean with order bump. And of course, the more they put in there, well, then you get the stacking of the orders. So that's, and that means that in order to be able to add something, it needs to be in the system. And then we get back to the consistency. So this year and last year, I recorded 3 challenges. I actually recorded more challenges the year before too, because I love talking about clarity. It's one of the most important things to me. And it's kind of funny because for me, clarity is linked to Chicago for 2 reasons. One is that I came up with the Clarity Challenge after I had been to Chicago, having been in various hotel rooms, but specifically for 4 weeks in Chicago with Chicky Joe. We had our own routine. She did certain things at that in that room, and I did other things, and it worked meticulously. So I was so happy. And then when I came back here, it was sheer chaos. And I wasn't too happy with that chaos that I saw. So I was like, okay, we need to change this. And then there was something else. They had this truck, and it was the cleanup crew. The cleanup crew was part of Chicago PD. Well, it's probably part of One Chicago. And they, when Chicago PD starts filming in Chicago, and this is a funny thing and a true thing, a lot of people in the US have no clue what Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, or Chicago Med is. The Chicagoans, that's a little bit differently because they experience that they are actually recording in the street. So what they do is they put these flyers on the trees announcing that people aren't able to park over there. And they, of course, they have to ask if that's okay. So when they start to record, the night before, you see a ton of trucks where they can sit, trucks with restrooms in there, trucks for the food, trucks with props, trucks to make sure that there's electricity. You can come up with it and it's there. So there are streets filled with trucks. And after they have recorded, and we are also talking about moving walls, moving trees, making daylight where it's night, recording nighttime when it's daylight. It's amazing what they can do. So they have a crew over 100 people. They each have their own task, and it works so nicely together. But as a result, they need to plan it, and that means a lot of money, a lot of people, and a lot of space that they need at that time. I've been very fortunate to see it together with Chicky Joe, and it made an impact on me. That's one thing for certain. So one day, after the recording, we ran into the cleanup crew with their own cleanup truck, which had, I don't know if it was a teddy bear. I think they had a teddy bear on the front of the truck. And, you know, I think it might be the inspiration of actually having Chief Rockstar, yeah, that one over there, with me on my backpack. Weren't that I actually have a lot of stuff on my backpack, which is all related to my travels. So when people see Chief Rockstar, they understand what it's about, especially the one who travel a lot. So clarity challenge, I've done a number of those. And when we talk about putting it in the system so people have access to it, well, that's a whole different ball game. But if I want to get people to join me, then what do I offer them? That's of course the question. Well, I'm a coach. Yes, I'm also a therapist. Yes, I'm also a trainer. So combined, I think I'm a mentor. But I still use elements from being a therapist, especially when we talk about hypnotherapy, because I like to do meditations and I like to talk about the inner child. Coaching is about asking the other one, like, hey, what do you plan on doing? So, as a trainer, I do explain a thing or two about how the mind works. I love when it comes to mindsets, the brain. There's this term called neuroplasticity, and the brain is, well, it's literally what it is. It can adapt. It can adapt, and I'm not going to say it adapts quickly, but it does adapt. The thing is, though, that it also remembers certain things, especially when they've had a huge impact on us, and also when they have been very traumatic. So, most people, when you ask them, where were you at 9/11, they can tell you. I can tell you too, because I might not have been in the US, but I was in the Netherlands. I was watching As the World Turns, and then there was a news flash. And our time, it was in the afternoon. So I'm not sure whether it's 3 or 4 in the afternoon. I think it was at 3. I remember where I was. I was in an apartment building from my boyfriend back then. So my current partner. We were living there because I sold my apartment and we were waiting for our house to be built. And I was lucky enough to be working at IBM, and they made it possible for me to work from home. So I was working from home, and I was watching As the World Turns, and then the news was there about the plane. And plane had crashed the building, and then there was another one, and then there were all these fires, and it was like, oh my God. And I remember calling my husband, back then still my boyfriend, like, oh my God, have you seen what's going on? I remember where he worked too. So they turned on the television, and I guess a lot of people still remember where it was, because it was unusual. This was new. This was like, what is this, World War III? It was very hard to capture what actually had happened. So fast forwarding, when we talk about trauma, a lot of things, or actually, let's go backwards, and not specifically in my life, but in your life too. So when something happens when you're a child between 0 and 7, and you don't understand what it is, but it's frightening, that leaves an imprint. And unfortunately, when we grow up, we are still dealing with that same imprint. It just doesn't function for us that well anymore. As a matter of fact, it can work against us. So when we talk about freeze, fright, or flight, it has all to do with the same sort of mindsets. So we decide either to hush, be quiet, or we have learned to do something else. So it's also about learned behavior. And again, it's something that worked for us when we were a child, when we didn't know how to rationalize. But nowadays, it's a completely different story. So when we were talking about mindsets today and about self-worth, and also yesterday, we're talking about self-worth. When I talk about what I want to get across, it's I want people to be able, so to learn and to be able to speak up, speak out, and share their story, so they are heard, seen, and understood and valued. And part of it has to do, oh my God, this is the thing today. It's kind of funny because Trent said something about it, and that's when you draw a blank. He called it differently, and it's specifically what I'm doing. So I remember that I talked about mindsets, about the whole trauma thing, about it not working for us, and I was going somewhere, and right now I'm I'm clueless. And that's part of being live. It's part of when you deal with me, it happens. I at some point do not know what I was talking about. So I'm just going to start somewhere. I don't know why it happens, but I do know it happens. It's probably part of something that's called EDS, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. So I'm hypermobile, and somehow, sometimes certain things do not really work the way they should. So getting back to the mindsets which are not working for us, we were talking about self-worth. Oh, that's what we were talking about. And so Jamie talked about it, which was, I'm not going to say it was confrontational, but it was good. And well, a lot has been said since, so I'm trying to recall specifically what it was, but it was about putting yourself first. However, Trent also said something about self-worth. And again, just like with Jamie, I was listening. And Trent said something about not only putting yourself first, it was not only about setting boundaries, it was about wanting to live up to others. He probably said it in a different way, but that's what it comes down to. So when we had this question and answer with Brennan Burchard yesterday, it was about focusing on what's going on outside of you instead of staying with what's important to you. And being a coach, I see that a lot. It's actually one of the reasons, or one of the things, how I recognize that something is important, because people tend to skip over it really quickly, or they don't answer that question. And the moment that they do, I'm like, oh yeah, there's the pain point. So when people do, I actually know I need to pay attention to this. And the thing is that we want to please others so badly. And, you know, when we talk about the whole school system, grades, being bullied, so wanting to fit in, needing certain things which have been told by our parents and about our teachers, all together, we don't want to stand out. We want to be accepted. We want to be seen, heard, valued. And, well, self-worth is totally linked to that part. So Trent talked about it today. He asked us some questions, and I realized for me it was linked to being bullied. It was linked to not being believed by especially the medical staff, so doctors. And it was also linked to bosses who basically, I'm not going to say they didn't believe me, but they didn't care. And so, yeah, a few things were pointed out today. And it was about, okay, we are not doing this for others, we are doing this for ourselves and what we deem important. So, for 2 days in a row, we have been talking about that. And one of the things I discussed with my own coach, so yes, I have a CHPC coach. And in case you're thinking I'm being sponsored by Brendan, no, I'm not. Um, but he knows what he's talking about. So that's the good thing. And here we go again. Oh, this is annoying. And that's probably because I've had a lack of sleep for the last couple of days. I know I wanted to continue talking about the whole self-worth and what Jamie was saying, and it's lost again. And yes, like I said, it's live, so bear with me. Normally, Cheeky Joe would be in the background, but she's very ill at the moment. She has long COVID. She got it at the early stages, as in when it was just discovered, and now she's got it again. So that's not good. So the whole self-worth thing and knowing what's important for you, those were things that I was thinking about this week. I'm talking about mindsets, and I actually made this one thing, which is about taking your negative thinking and creating it into positive thinking. I talked about it during my weekly live training, and because I realized how important it was, I was like, okay, I need to make a sheet about this one. Quite honestly, when I did a breakout room with someone else, we got to talk at some point about being harsh on yourself. So here's the thing. When we no longer hear the voice of the person who tells us to improve things and to do things better, maybe bully us, saying certain words, we tend to do it ourselves. We basically just repeat that voice. It's just not the other one that says it, it's us who do so. And the thing is that when we are not happy with what we are doing or something has happened, then there is some need of punishing ourselves. Again, it all depends on how you've grown up. But a lot of people feel the need to be firm with themselves, not be nice. And so the way they talk to themselves is like negative. And it's not only like you're not good enough. So we get back to the whole self-worth thing. Oh, there she is. I'm so happy she's here. I just told them that when COVID just hit, you contracted long COVID and that you just contracted COVID again. So that you're not here and I've missed you. I've drawn a few blanks already and it's a bit of a mess today. But I'm so happy she's here. So Cheeky Joe's here. Cheeky Joe's the one who's gone to Chicago with me a couple of times. So she was the one who also saw the cleanup truck and was part of the cleanup challenge. So yeah, that I'm not going to repeat that, but she's not happy with COVID. Okay, just so getting back to the mindsets and us being harsh on ourselves, us punishing ourselves, us telling ourselves what we can do or shouldn't do before someone else is going to say it to us, because the consequences might be bigger or it's simply ingrained in our system. Well, we want that changed. We want to love ourselves. We want to remember that we are good enough. So on one hand, we have being harsh with ourselves, which basically leads to people wanting to numb themselves. So especially the young ones out there, they have this habit of cutting themselves. The ones who are a little bit older, they usually numb themselves using alcohol. And there, of course, are a lot of other stuff, ways to numb yourself. But if we can start believing in ourselves, yeah, and Chica Joe says it too, self-love is very important. When we can start believing in ourselves and tell ourselves a different narrative, then of course things can change. And here's the thing, and Ed Malet didn't, yeah, he said it actually yesterday, but he also said it the previous time that we saw him. He talked about something called stacking. And what he said is you can either have a positive view on life, or you can have a way of negative thinking about life. So when you expect the worst, basically expecting the worst is a way to prevent yourself from being disappointed, because if you expect the worst, then it cannot get any worse than it already is. So it's a form of protection. But here's the thing. Once you go into that mode, then you see one thing, and then you see the other thing, and then you see the next thing, and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what he called stacking. And well, try to escape from that part. So when I talked about mindsets being ingrained in our system when we were growing up, not understanding why certain things were said to us, because we still couldn't rationalize ourselves. When I was talking about trauma, something happening to us where we decided never again, well, that's when we get to the whole negative thinking. Also, when there are people in your environment and they seem to prey upon people who have had certain experiences, especially where parents weren't very communicative and especially not equal to one another. And you would see one being dominant and the other one being abused, whether mentally, physically, or both. It tends to move on into the next generation, as in it's normal behavior for them. Of course, they know it's not, but on a subconscious level, when we talk about habits, they are used to it. So they do everything to avoid getting into an argument. And if that means that they have to place themselves underneath the other one, that's what we do, because we want peace and quiet. So self-worth is such an important thing. And when I made my framework for the first time when I was in Austin last year, so I wanted to know about this framework. I wanted to know, how do I create frameworks? And in order to figure that out, I decided to join CHPC because I heard Brendan talking about frameworks. And I was like, okay, how does that work? So I've got a very analytical brain. Yes, I'm very chaotic too. But I was like, how, why, when? And the one thing I didn't hear during the training of CHPC was how the framework was made, but I did hear it when I went to the coaching summit in Austin. And then recently, Brendan said something else too, and he said, how about if you were to create a framework for every time you give training? And I was like, oh, I love that. So that's how I came up with this thing today. So for those who were there from the beginning, they might have noticed that I was way later than I wanted to. And one of the reasons was I was battling with the printer. It was either the printer was available on the network, and then when I clicked print, it was gone again. And it was like, this is a very annoying game between the printer and me. It caused some delay. Then, of course, I used Instagram. I used the code, and then Instagram decided that I needed to, right after copying the code, so I could go live on Instagram too, decided that I needed to verify myself. And when I had done so, I couldn't go live anymore. I decided to quit, which I usually don't. Normally, I will just go on. Like you've seen, I've drawn a blank twice now. I keep going on. It's the way it is. It's life, and apparently, it's okay to be human, and that it shows you. So, well, I'll believe them when they say so. And apart from that, editing takes a lot of time. So, and this is me. Perfection is not needed nowadays. So I'm good enough with myself, and hopefully I'm good enough for you. And if I'm not good enough for you, then, well, I'm not going to change that. It's the way it is. So anyway, I wanted to go live on Instagram second time around, and then for some reason it had changed the code, even though I used the code that it said I needed to. So I'm not even live on Instagram. So it's this wonderful start of this live. And because I had 2 days of training, which ended at the time I normally start this live, and I still wanted to come up with a framework, I needed some time to actually come with something that made sense. So it's something about last week, because I decided to use as input for Friday Night Live everything I posted on Instagram, and also, which makes sense, talking about what I heard at Ultra. And again, the things that stuck with me had to do with self-worth. And it was kind of nice because having worked with my coach for about 5 months, like 12 sessions, but spread across 5 months, which had to do with the Chicago trip last year, I realized I needed more consistency to work on things. I needed to get the system, the platform filled with training. What I talked about earlier, if I refer people to certain things, then it's nice that actually something is there. And I realized that I needed to do 2 things. So, like I said, filling up the system, but the other one was creating content to fill up that system. So I need to learn how to work the system. That's one, but I also need to have content to go there. So, of course, they say the one thing that we would do if we would start anew as a coach is get one-on-one clients. Well, fortunately, I have those. Also, a few local. And then we would do group coaching sessions. So I've been thinking about that for a long time. And I was like, yeah. So March last year, I started group coaching. Now, the one thing I discussed with my coach was consistency, because she asked, what do you want to focus on? And I am being so proud to say that since December 1st, I've been going live like not live, I've been posting every day on Instagram. And as a result, I've been posting weekly or multiple times a week on YouTube as well. I've started going live again, Friday Night Live with Lady Lexy. And Chick Joe has said she will be there, whether it's in the background commenting or whether she's going to be live on here. So last week she was here live. That was amazing. Or I think you were live on the 3rd day of my courage challenge, actually. And so all combined, it's about, things might go haywire, but I still want to do it because it's about building habits. One of the things I also said to my coachees, so the one who took part in the group coaching session, was it's important to focus on one thing and then we get back to the whole negative and positive mindsets and the way we talk to one another, believing in ourselves, self-worth, and then we get to doubt. So if we want to focus on certain things and we want to say that we are going to go for it, chances are that we don't know what to choose. Are we going to do one thing or are we going to do the other thing? And like I said, when you are lacking self-worth and you are prone to having a negative view on things, so you might be like really inspired one moment and I'm going for it and you have all that energy, and then the next moment you're like, oh, I don't see any result, I don't know how to do it, and then there you go. That's why I came up with the transform your thinking, but it also led me to talk about that one thing. And what I realized when it came to consistency is I cannot do it all at the same time. So, of course, yes, I have to improve things when it comes to Kajabi and putting things in there, creating content. And actually, that's also linked to the whole consistency thing. So, this is about creating content, as in putting it out there on Instagram, putting it out there on YouTube, creating blog posts regularly, preferably weekly. And hence why I made this one, which was also about the courage challenge. But there are also things that I won't be able to do the right way straight away. One of them has to do with writing the emails. So yeah, I'm going to do it, just like I'm going to focus on regularly writing blog posts. But for now, I want to remain consistent, going posting on Instagram. So it's a little bit of a shame that the whole Instagram live is not working today, but it's the way it is. I can't help it. But I can still post things, and I actually posted already something, and I've got some other things that I still want to post. So the second thing was I am learning to work ahead of time. But it was kind of cool to actually realize that other people today were talking about that one thing as well. So one of the things I said to myself this week and last week, I actually talked to my coach about it. I said something is not going the way it should. And at that moment, for a second, I was like, I want to give up. Why did, it's not working. And today we talked about that extensively. So what I was thinking at that moment is, it's about what's going on underneath the surface. And a lot might actually be happening underneath the surface. Think about the seeds and roots and everything. So before you actually see what happens above ground, there's a lot going on underneath the ground in order to make it grow. And I was like, okay, so it makes no sense to give up now. I need to go on. I just need to figure out what is not working for me. So when Natalie talked about Instagram today, she talked a lot about tweaking and changing things. She didn't use the words. She had actually all these slides about what to post on Instagram and how to gain followers. And I was so happy that she was talking about this, because it's the one thing that I've been saying. I said it yesterday too. I need more people to find me. So I need more followers. And then we get back to, okay, but if I have more followers, then what do I have to offer? Well, of course, the one-on-one coaching and also the group coaching, but they need to be able to find me. So that means that I need to go to, yes, that website, that marketing system, so they can actually register. And then, of course, if we want to do and have a little bit more, then there needs to be content. So it's going full circle. Now you know what I talk about when we talk about that one thing. And it was good to realize, like, we cannot focus on too much. Brandon actually said it yesterday himself too. he said, okay, so what's your goal? And within that goal, what are the things that are most important? Now, if you have a lot of goals, scratch a couple of them so you can work on. So actually, you said work on 3 things. So for me, when I started to teach recently about that one thing, what I realized is it's about that one thing is actually something that's fun. It brings you energy, it brings you joy, and it's basically part of your foundation. So it helps you to get through the day when you do other things. So the one thing could be something that you do for a living, but it could also be a hobby. And when we talk about a hobby, it's actually something that you enjoy doing after you've worked or before you go to work, whatever. But basically, work pays for the hobby, and of course, work also pays for the whole security. So our living, our foods, all that stuff. Um, but we still need something that makes us happy, that we are that when we are filled with joy and we are over the moon, then we function a lot better. So foundation is key. And that one thing for me plays an immensely important part in what it is that we actually like. Now here's the thing, do we actually allow ourselves to do that one thing? What do we tell ourselves? Do we tell ourselves we are worth it, or do we tell ourselves we're not? If we are working on that one thing, how quickly are we going to give up because we do not get the results that we want? And what do we do? Do we go to the next thing, which we do like sort of half, and then the next thing and the next thing? Or are we going to say, no, let's get back to that one thing until we actually have mastered that one thing? So for me, like I said, creating content is key, but also, especially with the challenges, I want people to be able to go to what we call obtain a landing page where you leave your name and your number, not your number, your email, your name and your email. And then you get a free PDF, and then you get into that whole circus, what I was talking about. So you get offered something else. I want to do that too. And actually, I had to tell myself, no, let's get to the basics. So now we get back to that one thing again. So I realized, okay, creating content is priority. Creating a landing page, so where people can go to register, is important too. Of course, I need to write all those emails, but I'm not there yet. So let's focus on the content first, and they can always sign up for becoming part of my group coaching. That's there every Tuesday. So for those who want to learn to speak up, work on that one thing, work on their mindsets, you know where to go. So you find me, leave a comment, or better yet, go to Instagram, leave a comment, but reach out to me. So in order to learn certain things, I had to tell myself, okay, start with what you know. Start with the thing that you're good at. If I want to create that whole system with the order bumps and everything, instead of the simple OVO, opt-in value offer, yes, which also includes emails, then maybe I need to go back to, okay, you put your name in there, email address. I make sure that there is a thank you email and everything, double confirmation. And then you have your free PDF. And then, of course, the rest needs to go as well. And then we get back to the other thing. So in case you're wondering, is she going from left to right? It might seem that way, but there is sense to it. And then we get back to what Natalie was talking about today, which is, how do people find you? How do you build a following? So if I don't have enough people who will find me, and I don't have a following which actually wants to register and leave their name and email behind, because they know when I'm doing a challenge, it's probably live on there for a few days. And of course, it's the thing that when are people actually ready to say, you know what, I think I might need this for longer than just today. So, of course, I can say it's not worth it, but I come to understand that people actually appreciate what's happening out there. It could be that they don't have time. Here we go with the self talk. So, um, I like to think for myself that it's not about that it's not worth it. It's more like they either don't have the time, they don't have the money, they don't have the intention span, or they don't know how to find me. And then we get back to tweaking and changing the whole process, what Natalie was talking about. So, um, what she basically said is something is not working, then you need to figure out what's not working. Stick with that one thing until you figure out what it is. And since she was talking about creating a following, I was like, oh, that's what I need. And that's why it's okay that for myself, it's okay that I say, okay, I'm going to focus on getting that content out there consistently. My next step is getting it uploaded. And then we are going to work on that whole thing when it comes to emails and being able to upsell and downsell. Again, if I want to do that, there needs to be something in there which I can also refer people to. But having talked about choices, about focusing, about sticking to that one thing, working on that foundation, because like I said before, I believe that it's all, it's sort of all connected. There's a flow. I mean, I can tell you that I've worked for decades in IT, and then you might think, IT and coaching, what do they have in common? But one thing they have in common is I had to deal with communication a lot. So at some point I was actually communication manager, but I've done a lot of meetings with clients and with providers. So I would be on both ends. I would be on the vendor end, um, being the one who actually was in charge of the services we delivered and the infrastructure. But we also needed to buy equipment for that same infrastructure, and we had to talk with people about what it is they needed. And when there would be, let's not talk IT talk, I want to say an incident. So when something was going on and they wouldn't be able to access their data anymore, or the computers or whatever it was, of course, then we needed to talk to the one who were in charge of providing them to us, because you can be part of a computer center, but the computer center itself won't be responsible for any cables, as in, we're talking not only Wi-Fi, but we're talking about back in the days copper, and then later, of course, glass fiber. So those are things that are in the hands of other people. Electricity, same story. It's also in the hands of other people. So we need to talk with multiple parties in order to get the client what he or she wants, or what they want. And also, so the providers start working with one another when something is not working. Communication. I also saw a lot of people dealing with reorganizations, especially when I was at IBM. And yes, I saw the consequences. Also at some other companies I would used to work at, I would see what it would do if there was another reorganization and people had to go to different locations. And yes, communication was something that was, always present, whether I was answering phone calls, or whether I was actually going to the client and talk about, okay, what's going on? What do you need? What do we need to change? And I loved that part. So when I became a medical fitness instructor, well, actually, I became a fitness instructor because of how I am built and things not working the way it should. And then became a medical fitness instructor, and then next a massage, sports masseuse, and then a coach and a counselor. It's, it all seemed to fit because they have one thing in common. I communicate with people. So I've been a trainer multiple times. I was actually a trainer when I was still in the IT. And, it's nice to, when we talk about speaking up and speaking out and sharing your story, it's about being seen, heard, and understood. So when I would be giving training and I would talk about a new framework, new guideline, a new structure, then people were already like, oh my God, here we go again. Changes. And they didn't want changes. They were already fed up with reorganizations. And then they had to work differently. And no one likes change because then we have to learn new things. And, well, chances are that we don't understand how it works straight away. And we don't like that discomfort. So, but when I would share stories they would understand, so I would talk in their language, then all of a sudden it made sense why we wanted to apply that framework and that they could be part of how it would come into existence. Because on contrary, what a lot of people believe, the whole goal is that there are people from the organization testing that whole thing and giving input. The IT people, they are not the gods. Management are not the gods. They can see certain things, but it all starts and finishes with the end users. So they do have something to share and to say. But the communication was the one thing that I loved. Communication and mindset. Why do people do the things they do? And having been bullied myself, having been an outsider, having been on the outside, looking at people who felt like they were pushed to the side, not having been believed when I was dealing with health issues, especially when I couldn't walk anymore, apart from on one foot and a few toes, that part of speaking up has become more and more and more important to me. So one of the dreams I've always had was actually to write a book for business owners to look differently at their employees, to recognize their skills, to see the value in them, and also to see how they can nurture what they're good at. So if you do so, then I believe if you put the right person in the right spot, that you actually increase the worth of your value, because they will come up with things and solutions. But of course, that means delegating. And then we get back to that one thing. That one thing for management should be about where are we going with the company instead of doing everything within the company. And I know a lot of people who don't dare to trust their employees to do the thing, or they simply don't communicate because their mindset is, I'm not being heard, seen, and understood. I've said it once. They were supposed to understand it. They were supposed to do it, and they didn't do it. So there we go. Full circle. Everything again and again and again. One thing, however, I did decide. So there are two things. One thing I said, I want to focus on getting a bigger following. Well, one of the ways to do so is by going live like every week now, doing so consistently. One of the other things was I, of course, want to make sure that the system is filled with content. I also want to make sure that at the end of the year, or at least in half a year, September, I will be able to create that Chicago trip. So it's a coaching trip in Chicago where I want people to stay for a few days with me in a hotel. And so there are several rooms, and then we go do certain things in Chicago. So there are certain assignments, and they all lead to certain things with regards to their mindsets, how they look at themselves. We get back to the self-worth, what it is they want to accomplish in life or what they want to change in life, but mostly about how they think about themselves, and as a result, how that reflects on other people too. So how they can work with other people so they don't have to work so hard themselves. But yeah, that requires letting go. It requires trust. It requires delegating and especially communicating. Having said so, one step at a time is the one thing that I've been saying all over again and again and again and again and again and again the last couple of weeks. Because when we talk about that one thing, which energizes us, which makes us happy, which is part of that foundation, then we, like I said, you put it in place, you work on it, and then you tweak and change it. But it's by doing it one step at a time. You can't do it all together at once. It just won't work. And that's the reason why I said, okay, I'm going to do certain things and I'm not going to do other things yet. It's like, okay, let's good at this one thing. And when we're good at that, then we go to the next thing. And I was so happy when, you know, they talked about that it actually was a good strategy to stick with that one thing until it was the way to do it. And it's one of the reasons that I actually joined Ultra. And so the whole Ultra thing is to take us to the next level. So if we're not afraid to actually work on ourselves, then that's, and we are not afraid to look inwards, then I could highly recommend it. And if you're interested, then yeah, do let me know. Because it's not about advertising for Brendan, but I do actually have an affiliate link. So that's good. Well, wrapping up with all of this month is about productivity. So, of course, there is going to be a productivity challenge the last weekend of the month. We are not there yet. We're at the beginning of the month. And actually, tomorrow is going to be Saturday. Unless you're in Europe, then it's already Saturday. But I do want you to reflect on what that one thing is for you and what you're going to do when you take one step at a time. And when you could use some coaching, then please do go to my website. I'm not sure that I actually have a landing page for that one. So either leave a comment somewhere on here or simply go to ladylexy.com/blog. I think you can leave a comment over there, or simply go to the Courage Challenge. When you sign up, you get a free PDF. And then, of course, when you say over there, like, oh, I want something else too, then I will be able to find you. And that's what I meant. And then again, we get to full circle. If I want to offer the right things have to be in place for you to find it, which means that I need to understand the system. But if I do everything, I'm all over the place, and then it won't work. So I've been focusing on getting the challenges out there. And before I'm going to get the new challenge out there, I can, of course, announce it. But when it comes to that landing page, so you can actually join my group coaching every Tuesday, I do need to create it. So hence, one step at a time. The good news is I've proven to myself that I can be consistent. This is the third Friday in a row. Friday Night Live with Lady Lexy. I think Chicky Joe actually came up with the Friday Night Live. And I believe that I actually added the Lady Lexy. part. So, a good way to work together. So that's cool. Um, so keep watching it. If you want more content, it's both there on YouTube and it's on Instagram. There will be ways to reach out to me. Please do so. And if you need some inspiration, then you do know where to go. So I'll see you next week, or otherwise, I'll see you somewhere on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube.